guys, it's Olivia and welcome back to Live in Literature. Thank you so much for the love and support I received on my last video, and if you have not seen it yet, feel free to head on for a channel to check it out. Well guys, today's video, I am so excited to bring this one to you. I've been thinking a lot about what I wanted to film and kind of like where my vibe was at, and I kind of wanted to go over some of my thoughts on the most overhyped, appropriately hyped, and underhyped books on Book Talk and in the book community. So I guess really kind of this video all stemmed from my mom sent me a reel of someone doing a challenge very similar to this, and basically just going over like their most overhyped, underhyped, and appropriately hyped books. And I think this all stems obviously because of Book Talk, and I would love to know if you guys, this is just of my own like selfish ask and wish of like in the comment section, please comment down below if you guys would be interested in hearing a like book rant from me about my thoughts on Book Talk and how it's like changed the book community and the reading community in general. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on that if you think that would be an interesting video to watch, or if you're like, that sounds boring, just talk about books that you like. Because like I'm down to do whatever. So just let me know. But really it all stems from Book Talk, because Book Talk is kind of what nowadays is kind of like deciding what is going to be hyped, what is going to be popular, like what everyone's going to be reading, to be honest. Like most people, when they're going to choose a book to read, they go to Book Talk. They're like, what's everyone reading on Book Talk? What's going on Book Talk?
Regina George is flawless. She has 2 Fendi purses and a silver Lexus.
I hear her hair is insured for $10,000.
And to be honest, like I do a little bit of my research that way. I'm also like, I've definitely gotten some Book Talk recommendations that I've loved and some that I've hated. So I feel like it's definitely like a hit or miss. Like I feel like it's not always the most like truthful source of information.
TikTok lied to me?
And that's where you get into today's video about overhyped, underhyped, and appropriately hyped books on Book Talk. I really tried to curate my list to make it as simple as possible, and I really tried to keep it to what is most popular on Book Talk right now, and like as cohesively as I possibly could. And so most of the books you're going to be seeing here today are from Book Talk, or ones that have been mostly recommended on Book Talk. But I do have a couple of like, I got a couple of wild cards up in here today. I will say that all the books that I'm going to be recommending to you today, like I would read them and I've enjoyed all of them. Like I have like relatively enjoyed every single book I'm going to recommend today. But without further ado, let's just get into the video. We're going to start with Overhyped. Let's get started. Okay, like I said, we're starting with the overhyped category, and these are ones on Book Talk that I think are extremely overhyped. Like I just think that they've gotten a little bit too much like traction on the internet. We're like, we get it. It's a good book, but is it the best book? And so first one I want to start with out of the gate is It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. Now, I do enjoy this book, and I know there's a lot of flack online about Miss Colleen, whether you like her, whether you don't. To be honest, like I enjoy her. I think she's a good author. I don't know if she's like the greatest author of all time and I'm going to read every single book that she writes. But I read It Ends With Us. I read It Ends With Us because of Book Talk. And I will be honest, I enjoyed It Ends With Us. I loved It Ends With Us. It was one of my, at the time, it was a 5-star read for me. Like back in like, I think it was 2023, 2022 when I read this one. It was definitely a 5-star read. I was like, wow, mind blowing. What a crazy concept. But as I've gotten older and further away from It Ends With Us, I can kind of see how people have been interpreting it, and I can kind of see where like people's points are being made where they're like, this book is low-key kind of problematic. But I also think that it does tell a really important message. For those who don't know, It Ends With Us is about a young girl named Lily Bloom. She lives in Boston. She opens a flower shop. She meets a nice man. They start like hanging out, things escalate from there, but she still has this old love that she keeps bringing up in all of these moments about an old love of hers named Atlas, who was a kid that she knew back when she was in high school and he was homeless, but she's still like, she was kind of like taking care of him, and it was a really sweet story. The book is really beautiful, but really tragic. I would just say that, like, for me, I think it's a little overhyped on Book Talk. Because people are like, what's the most devastating, like, awful thing you've ever read? And I will say this definitely, like, goes in the category. But I just think that it's, like, a little bit too much. Like, I think we're talking about this book, like, a little bit too much when there are other books that I think are way better and way more well written than this one. Don't get me wrong, I think this is a great book, but I just think it's a little bit overhyped. Next, we're going with one that I have ranted and raved about as one of the worst written things I've ever read, but also when the concept is so good, it almost doesn't even matter. And so we have Kingdom of the Wicked by Carrie Maniscalco. I've got issues with Miss Carrie Maniscalco, okay?
We're gonna straighten you out!
This'll fix you.
She decided to write a brilliant concept. The concept was brilliant. No one was doing this. No one was doing this concept. And then she had to go and ruin it by the writing being so poor. The writing was so poor.
It is so bad, I want to give you a 0.
And how like disjointed the story was, and how it just didn't like, it was not cohesive and it didn't make sense. The concept for this book is absolutely brilliant. It starts with a young witch named Amelia and her sister Victoria, who are witches in the Sicilian era. And it's more of like a low-key thing. They don't really tell people about it. Essentially, one night her twin sister goes missing, finds her dead. It's a whole thing. And so to get her sister back, Amelia accidentally summons wrath one of the princes of hell to essentially like help her find her sister, and summons a demon essentially to help her find her sister. But it ends up turning into this whole long mess that like you get into in the book. Essentially though, like, I think the concept is so brilliant. I really genuinely do. I'm like, Carrie Maniscalco, you had a great idea. It's witches, it's princes of hell. Like, the princes of hell are all separated into their own kingdoms, and this happens to be like each one of the 7 deadly sins, the vices, and this is wrath, and wrath is hot and super sexy. Like, this book had the potential to be amazing. And I think it is amazing. But the problem is, I just think it's so poorly written that I cannot get behind it. And people are constantly being like, oh my gosh, if you love enemies to lovers, oh my gosh, if you love like crazy, like dark and brooding bad boys and like shadow daddies and whatever, read this book. And I'm like, don't get me wrong, the book is fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
I'm fine. Totally fine.
And last, but not least, moving on to our last one in the overhyped category. And this one's going to come as a shock to a lot of you. We've got Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros. I'm sorry, guys, but Iron Flame is one of the most overhyped books on the internet. Now, in retaliation to her sister, Fourth Wing, the first one, I actually think the Fourth Wing is appropriately hyped. I think Fourth Wing is fine. Like, I think the Fourth Wing, like, leave her alone. Like, let people love Fourth Wing. But the second book in this series, Iron Flame, is one of the most overhyped books of all freaking time, okay? Iron Flame, don't get me wrong, it has its moments. There are moments that I loved. And did I eat this book up? Yeah. Did I read it at light speed? Yeah. But guess what? The writing is poor. Again, disjointed, like not making sense, like timeline-wise with the characters. And I'll be honest, some of the characters were so irritating in this. And when I say some of the characters, I mean Violet was being absolutely so irritating this entire book.
God, Karen, you are so stupid.
Moving on. I just think that Iron Flame is like Rebecca Yarros. Like, I think you're really talented, babe. I think you're really talented. I think you got the potential to make something great. The problem is you need to slow down and not publish books at light speed. Now, I will say I'll give her some massive credit. She did wait. She's waiting almost a whole year to publish Onyx Storm. So I feel like she's like slowing down. I think she realized her mistake with Fourth Wing because it got so much hype when it was released in like April of last year. And then to drop Iron Flame in November of the same year, like that was crazy. To do 2 books like back to back like that was insane. I just think she needs to slow down, take her time. But I just think Iron Flame is one of the most overhyped books on the internet currently. I just cannot get behind it. Don't get me wrong, it's a good book. And I'm glad that I read it because I want to keep reading the Fourth Wing series because I really like Fourth Wing. But I just think that like she needs to slow down and take her time. Rebecca, love you, babe. Just slow down. Take your time, really think through what you want to write, and then publish it because I will be happy to read it. I really will. Next, we're moving on to the appropriately hyped category. Now, these are books that have blown up on Book Talk that are appropriately hyped. Like, I think the hype that they receive is appropriate and it is warranted. So, let's start with our cult classic, Miss Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I think that Evelyn Hugo is definitely appropriately hyped on the internet. I will say it gets a lot of hype and I think it's all warranted for the book. To give you a quick plot summary, Evelyn Hugo is a movie star in the 1950s, and this book is essentially like a biography of her life, and essentially goes through her entire life in the 1950s and 60s and being a movie star and the struggles of that, and the obviously like the 7 husbands that she meets along the way and the other lovers that she has along the way as well. The book, I feel like, is extremely well written. I feel like it is very poignant for today's time. I feel like the characters are believable and you believe in Evelyn so much and you want her to succeed. Like, I just remember reading this being like, I just want Evelyn to get the credit she deserves the whole time.
See, I love you so much. I just want you to be happy.
And it's hard being a woman in this industry in the 1950s. Like, it's so hard, and you just read about her struggle and you just want her to succeed so badly. And I just ate this book up. Like, I absolutely loved it. I cried over it. I just thought it was brilliant. I thought it was brilliantly written. I think that Taylor Jenkins Reid is a phenomenal author, one of my favorites, literally incredible. And this book deserves all the hype it gets. Next, moving on to one that I am like, I debated for a while if this was going to go into overhyped or appropriately hyped, but we have Powerless by Lauren Roberts. Now, you have all heard my Powerless rant. You've all heard about the elites, the ordinaries, Peyton and Kai, enemies to lovers. We get it, okay? We've also heard my rant about how this is, the writing in this is mid, yes, but I think that the banter and the enemies to lovers in this is absolutely so appropriately hyped. And it gets way hyped on the internet. Like, people are like screaming, crying, throwing up over this book. I mean, insane too, I get it. So I do agree. I do think that Powerless deserves the hype it gets because of how amazing the banter is, how incredible the banter and the enemies to lovers and the tension and like the knives to throats of it all is. I think that is what is appropriately hyped about Powerless. Now, is the story basic? Yes. Is the plot the most basic plot you've ever read? Yes. But is the enemies to lovers just like chef's kiss is the most immaculate, like,
so delicious. I gotta have more. I gotta have more.
ooh, you just like, it like hits something in the back of your brain and it's like scratching an itch back there that you like never knew you needed scratched. Yes, like I just think the enemies to lovers in this is delicious. And was I giggling and kicking my feet the whole time like a little girl being like, hee hee hee, Kai is so cute, hee hee hee. Yes, I was the whole time.
Probably upstairs combing her hair so she'll be the prettiest girl at the party. I'm gonna be the prettiest girl at the party.
So I do think that this book's appropriately hyped for the banter, but is it like a god tier level book? Is it in the pantheon of the best books ever written? No, it is not. But it does belong in the appropriately hyped books on Book Talk. So we'll give it that. And last but certainly not least, you know her, you love her. She's probably the most talked about book on the internet. And that is A Court of Thorns and Roses by Miss S.J.M. My mother, my queen, the woman who I literally look up to in all things. I'm a devoted servant to in this cult.
She's the mother. She is Mother Earth. She is Mother Gaia. She is your mother.
Obviously, we have to talk about ACOTAR as one of the most popular books, like literally currently in the entire world. ACOTAR is the thing that essentially Book Talk was started because of ACOTAR. Like, Book Talk exists because of ACOTAR. Like, I don't think we would have Book Talk today if it wasn't for ACOTAR.
I dumped her because I met you. It's different with you. I can't get you out of my head.
And to be honest, I think that it's appropriately hyped. I do. I think the whole ACOTAR franchise is appropriately hyped on Book Talk. I don't think it's overhyped and I don't think it's underhyped. I think it is perfectly hyped on the internet. It's talked about more often, I think, than any other book on that app. And I genuinely believe that it deserves the hype it gets. I don't think that I think that people, can get a little crazy with it with ACOTAR, but I genuinely think it deserves every hype. I think the story is brilliant. I think the characters are to die for. I think that something I've been learning from people, because I read this one a while ago. I read ACOTAR back in 2019 before Book Talk had even discovered it essentially, and it blew up on the internet. And I think that from what I've been seeing of my friends who are reading ACOTAR now is that they're talking about how this first book is really hard. And I've talked about this where I think the first ACOTAR book is one of Sarah's most weakest books. I don't think it's her strongest book. To be honest, it doesn't really get good until the last 150 pages. But those 150 pages I feel made the whole book. And so I do agree with a lot of people's reviews of it where they're this book is weak, but the rest of the series is what makes this book series amazing. This first one she's the crux of it all. She's the weak link in the ACOTAR franchise, but she's the one that started it all. And so I have to give it to her. I think this book is absolutely appropriately hyped. I think it deserves all the hype it gets, and I think it's amazing. I think what Sarah's created with this world is amazing. I'll never stop talking about Sarah. I'll never stop talking about this book. It's perfect. And last but certainly not least, the category I have been most excited to talk about, which is the underhyped category. Now, these are books that I think are underhyped, okay? Like, this is my own personal opinion. I feel like these books are absolutely underhyped on Book Talk. I feel like they're not talked about enough. I feel like these are books that like, and I wanted to recommend like recent books or books that are like relevant to like right now. And so these are the most popular. I'm not recommending like Percy Jackson or something, but like, don't get me wrong, Percy Jackson is great. But like, I'm here to recommend, these are the ones that I think are underhyped on Book Talk. We are starting with The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo. Where are the people on Book Talk talking about Miss Leigh Bardugo? Where are the people on Book Talk talking about The Familiar? I'm over here repping for The Familiar. I'm over here repping for Miss Leigh Bardugo because everyone's always like, oh my gosh, Six of Crows, Six of Crows, Six of Crows. And don't get me wrong, yes, like Six of Crows is perfect. Like Six of Crows is that girl.
She's an icon, she's a legend, and she is the moment. Now, come on now.
This is Leigh Bardugo's newest book called The Familiar. It is essentially a Spanish Inquisition style book. It's historical fiction, essentially, about a young girl with powers who lives in this time where she's like a servant to a semi-wealthy family, but they're very poor, down on their luck. She essentially like wants to make something of herself. She starts practicing magic for this family, and she eventually becomes like very famous. And people need to know, like, people essentially want to know, like, is her magic safe, or does it come from God, or does it come from the devil? This book has to do a lot with like the Spanish Inquisition, essentially proving if people were like worshiping Satan or worshiping like God or whatever, and the whole like Catholicism versus Christianity. And then of course, like, are they a devil worshiper or are they a like God worshiper? This book is a lot of like religious aspects. This book has a lot of like interesting magic and like what the magic is relied on, like within the person. Like, there's a lot of deception. It has a lot to do with like essentially proving that like, were people worthy to hold the magic that they have, or should we just kill them? And then it also has a lot to do with the fact that our main character, she's also Jewish, and she's currently hiding her Jewish background. The things that she does though to like activate her magic though is like speak/sing in the Jewish language, but she can't do that really in public because like people who know that she's Jewish, and then they'll, you know, burn her at the stake because Spanish Inquisition sucks. It totally blows. So The Familiar though, I just feel like it's one of Leigh Bardugo's most well-written books. I feel like it is so beautiful. Like, I feel like the writing is just like, oh, it's just crisp. It's just so well written. The writing is gorgeous. The story is compelling. And I just like loved our main character. I loved her. I just fell in love with her. I wanted to be her. I was like, yes, she gets it. She's like fighting for something. She's someone that I am compelled to follow and love. Like, I just feel like she's someone who wanted to write her own story. And I just feel like that is so compelling. I feel like not enough people are talking about this book online. People are being like, they're just recommending all the same ones. I think this book is not being talked about enough. And I just wish everyone would keep talking about it and read The Familiar. I just think it's absolutely brilliantly ran and is so underhyped. Next, we have maybe an odd recommendation from me, but it's one that I just, again, I feel like it's really underhyped online. And I feel like it's not getting enough attention. And that is Starling House by Alex E. Harrow. Starling House, guys, a modern fantasy, gothic fantasy, okay? Modern, which like normally I hate. Normally I hate a modern fantasy. I hate an urban fantasy. This is a modern gothic fantasy book that like, I just think not enough people are talking about. To give you a quick plot summary of Starling House, essentially Starling House is about a young girl named Opal. She's like in her 20s, high school dropout, an orphan. She works like as a cashier at like a supermarket. She's trying to she and her younger brother Jasper live in like a hotel room that like they rent out. And essentially they're trying to like, she's trying to make a better life for him. And it's just very bleak. Like the situation that she's in is very bleak, and she's trying to get out of Eden, Kentucky. But there's this like this house that is like that is in Eden, Kentucky, that where she lives, and this house has like sinister things around it. There's a famous like 19th century author that wrote a famous book from this house, and she always has dreams about this house. Like at night she dreams about this house. She dreams about things that go on in this house, and the book that she like fell in love with when she was a kid called Underland. Anyways, this goes into essentially she accidentally gets hired for a job at Starling House, which is the name of this famous home. And there's a caretaker there named Arthur, and he's really mysterious and weird. And essentially she has to figure out like what is going on at this house, and essentially like how she's going to like solve this like 100-year-old mystery about why the house is the way that it is. The book is rather haunting, the book is rather spooky, and it's also kind of weird. But I really liked it for some reason. I was really drawn to it for some reason. I really liked Opal as a character. Like, I found her gritty and like passionate and just very like fiery, and just like I fell in love with her. I loved Opal. I just thought she's just like a scrappy girl, and she's just like, I'm just trying to make it work. Like, I am just trying to survive for my brother to get him the life that he deserves, because like there's no way that I'm gonna get that for myself. And like, she chooses just to like not want things for herself, and then she like does. Like, it's just beautiful. The book is like kind of spooky and twisted, and there's a lot of like interesting gothic magic that happens that's very like weird, but I just liked it. I liked it a lot. I think it's a weird book, but I just really liked it. And I think that this will be like perfect for like spooky season coming up in October. Like, this is a book I would read in October, but I still think it's not getting hyped enough on the internet. Guys, I'm telling you, Book Talk, pick up this book. Starling House is that girl. She's weird, she's awkward, she's gothic, but she's also tells a great story, and like about wanting things for yourself and like getting the life that you deserve. And so I really like this book. I really like Opal, and I just think that this book is wonderful and is really underhyped on Book Talk. And last, but certainly not least, this is one that is not going to be any surprise to anyone that I want to talk about it. And I also think it is extremely underhyped on the internet. And we have Miss SJM's Throne of freaking Glass. I'm talking about the entire 7-book series, okay? All of Throne of Glass, okay? It's the most underhyped series on Book Talk because all anyone can talk about is ACOTAR, okay? Do I think that the hype that ACOTAR receives is appropriate? Yes, I think that the hype it deserves is appropriate. But why is Throne of Glass so underhyped? Why is no one talking about the beauty that is Throne of Glass? Why is no one talking about the perfect world building that is Throne of Glass? The exquisite character development, the story of a lifetime, the perfect bow tied in a knot around this book series, because it is completed, it is done. No one's talking about it except for me.
And nobody seems to care.
I literally, like, I read this book series literally like 3-4 years ago at this point. Like, probably 4 years ago, 5 years ago at this point. Like, I am a veteran of Throne of Glass, and I still think it is the greatest book series I have ever read. Like, of all time. I've read a lot of books in my life. I've been reading since I was literally in the womb, I feel like. And this book still comes out on top as the greatest fantasy series I have ever read. And people are like, oh yeah, and don't forget about Throne of Glass. Oh yeah, don't forget about Throne of Glass, though. You can throw that one in there if you want. No, we're not just throwing it in.
Ava, you mad woman?
We're not just casually talking about Throne of Glass, okay? We are talking about the greatest fantasy series ever to be written with the single greatest female character to ever be designed, okay? Like, I am being so serious when I say that I feel like this book is so underhyped and that no one talks about my girl, Selena Sardonthian, Aelin Galathynius, Rowan Whitethorn, Lorcan Savitar, Iliad Locken, Men in Black Beak, Dorian Haviland, Kale Westfall. Like, no one's talking about them.
Don't take this the wrong way, but you're insane.
I'm not insane. My mother had me tested.
No one's talking about them the way that I talk about them. No one loves them the way that I love them. And I think it's the most underhyped book series of all time. Because I just think it does not get nearly enough hype. Because ACOTAR is always stealing Sarah's thunder for the most hyped thing on planet Earth. And I'm like, guys, yes, ACOTAR is beautiful. It's wonderful. I think it deserves every hype it gets. But let's not forget about where it all started. Where Miss SJM grew up. The roots of her being start with Throne of Glass. This is the number one. She's it. This is her. Thank you for listening to my TED Talk about Throne of Glass and my insane rant. I just think it's one of the most underhyped books of all time. And I think that everyone needs to read this book series if you haven't, because it will change your life. It will change your life in ways that you didn't even know it needed to be changed. It changed my life. It's what started this whole channel. And so I literally cannot thank Sarah enough for Throne of Glass, because I think it is the most beautiful thing ever written. So everyone needs to go read Throne of Glass. If you haven't, please read it. It is wonderful. It's the best thing of all time. It's the greatest thing ever written. So go read Throne of Glass. That is all the books that I have for you guys today. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. And if you did, do not forget to like, comment, subscribe to the Live in Literature YouTube channel. Again, guys, I'm so glad that I got to talk to you about my overhyped, underhyped, and absolutely worth the hype books. Again, if you guys would like to see a book talk rant or a rant about the book community and how it's changed over the past couple of years, please let me know if you'd be interested in that. If you're like, that's boring, just give us more book recommendations, I'm happy to do that too. I've been reading a lot of good stuff recently. I just finished reading Reckless by Lauren Roberts. I want to talk about it. I have thoughts. And I just finished reading The Vampires of El Norte, which is one of my books I was most looking forward to reading this year. So, again, thank you guys so much for joining me here on the channel today. I will catch you in the next one. I love you the most, and I'll see you next time. Bye.